All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we are unpacking a story told from a totally wild perspective, one you've probably never heard before. It's essentially an autobiography written by your very own brain. We're going to translate and break down this incredible narrative that actually personifies the human mind, letting it explain its own marvels, its hidden vulnerabilities, and ultimately its destiny. It's a journey deep into the exact organ that is literally making it possible for you to understand the words coming out of my mouth right now. Think about it. Your brain's ultimate superpower is that it relentlessly processes millions of inputs, and you don't even notice it. The source material beautifully describes this as a never-ending traffic of information. Whether you're laser-focused on a tough project, just daydreaming on your way to work, or in the deepest, absolute most restorative stages of sleep, this biological supercomputer is just quietly humming along. It manages a breathtaking volume of data every single second of your life, orchestrating your heartbeat, your breathing, your thoughts, without ever once asking for a break.
Part 1. The Treasure of Memory.
So let's start with how the brain actually absorbs our entire world. Literally from the exact second a baby is born, we have these 5 sensory gateways acting like ultra-advanced data collectors. Your eyes, ears, tongue, nose, and skin are constantly uploading thousands upon thousands of data points straight into the brain's massive storage vault. You aren't consciously aware of this invisible inventory being taken, but there is never a moment where this sensory traffic stops flowing inward. The subtle breeze on your arm, the faint hum of the AC in the background, the exact smell of your morning coffee, it is all being meticulously logged and filed away. Now here's the real kicker. Without this silent storage system running in the background, just staying alive would be a total nightmare. Imagine it. Without this biological data vault, you simply wouldn't learn from pain. You'd constantly touch burning hot pots on the stove because, well, the memory of that heat just wouldn't exist. You'd repeatedly slip on the same slick floors, and you'd constantly have to relearn how to walk or talk. But honestly, the most tragic part, without this function, you wouldn't even recognize the faces of your own family. Everyday tasks and deep human relationships would be impossible hurdles. This invisible storage is the engine keeping our lives moving forward. But memory isn't the whole story. The brain is also a literal mechanic. It has this incredible self-healing superpower. It's not just a static hard drive in your skull, it's amazingly adaptable. The text points out that even when a part of the brain fails, or after a massive physical injury, it has the phenomenal ability to slowly reconnect its own circuits. Sure, it might take a lot of time for healthy new cells to take over complex tasks from damaged ones, but it is actively working to repair broken links. This is exactly why we see paralyzed individuals eventually regain their speech, their mobility, and their memories through rehab. It rebuilds its own intricate communication networks completely from scratch.
Moving right along to Part 2, The Great Blessing of Forgetting.
Okay, so we just talked about the marvel of memory, but the source makes this really fascinating argument that the exact opposite, the ability to forget, is actually the brain's greatest gift. We always praise having a sharp memory, right? But if we remembered every single thing with perfect high-definition clarity, a mother would never survive the grief of losing a child. She'd probably lose her mind or physically collapse from the sheer crushing weight of it. We'd never move past deep humiliations, severe traumas, or crippling anxieties. We would completely lose our mental balance. Forgetting isn't a glitch. It is an absolutely vital defense mechanism. And that brings us to one of my absolute favorite quotes from the text. We casually throw around the phrase, time heals all wounds, right? Well, the brain actually steps in and corrects us here. Time, as just a concept, doesn't do anything on its own. By intentionally and carefully moving those painful, bitter memories out of your immediate daily reach, the brain itself acts as the ultimate doctor. It systematically dulls the sharp, jagged edges of trauma. By fading those overwhelming feelings into the background, it gradually pulls us out of despair and lets us function, smile, and actually live again.
Part 3. Major Enemies of the Brain.
Now, despite all these almost magical powers of healing and memory, our superhero organ lives in a vulnerable fortress. It faces some incredibly deadly physical threats. Even though it's encased in a tough skull, the brain highlights 3 primary villains. First, you have tumors, which cause severe damage by invading healthy tissue. Thankfully, modern surgery can often neutralize that threat. But the other 2, ruptured veins and physical trauma, are far more sudden, totally unpredictable, and often way more deadly. Take a stroke, for example. It's a deadly chain reaction that usually starts incredibly small, like just a microscopic blood clot forming in a narrow vein. But that tiny clot blocks the flow, causing the blood pumping from behind to build up immense surging pressure against the vessel walls.
Eventually, a weak vein simply cannot handle it and it ruptures. The second that happens, the vital blood supply and all the oxygen it carries is instantly cut off from that specific part of the brain. That leads to catastrophic cognitive consequences in a matter of seconds.
But the biggest physical enemy the text points out is severe head trauma. And there's this really cruel irony here. The skull is made of dense, hard bone, right? It's literally an evolutionary helmet. The brain even floats in specialized fluid to absorb everyday bumps. But if severe trauma causes the brain to swell, there is absolutely zero room for expansion inside that rigid bone box. As the swelling goes up, the pressure violently crushes the soft brain tissue against the unyielding skull. That destroys those massive reserves of memory and breaks down the delicate communication networks, one by one.
Which brings us to part 4, when everything stops. So as that internal pressure mounts from an injury, or as an aging body just naturally hits its biological limits, the breakdown becomes systemic. The text vividly describes how darkness begins to fall over one side of the brain and then the other. The vast, buzzing communication lines go totally quiet. Lifelong memories begin to fade into the background, until finally, complete and total blackout. It's the ultimate reality check, a natural conclusion that we humans usually avoid thinking about while we're healthy and vibrant.
But instead of framing this final moment as some cold, terrifying system failure, the source material offers a beautifully profound perspective. The brain describes death as a peaceful, systematic powering down. It says the soul is simply turning off the body's switches one by one. It's not a tragic end, it's a graceful transition. It's purposefully shutting down the vessel's operations, allowing the soul to leave the physical realm and return to its true, eternal origin.
Finally, let's zoom way out for part 5, the brain of the future. We sit here today marveling at our minds. We think of them as these ultimate, highly advanced biological supercomputers, and they are. But look 1,000 or 2,000 years down the road. Scientists of the future might look back at our current brains and wonder how we ever managed with such basic, primitive capabilities. The text suggests an incredible evolutionary jump that compared to the newly discovered, highly evolved abilities of future humans, our mental capacity right now might look exactly like a chimpanzee's brain looks to us today.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Will our incredible, complex, self-healing minds, the exact same minds that built sprawling global cities, cured devastating diseases, and explored the vacuum of space, eventually be seen as nothing more than an early, primitive stepping stone? Will the very things we consider absolute miracles of human cognition today just be basic child's play in the distant future? It is absolutely wild to think about, courtesy of the very organ that allows you to think about it in the first place.